Hi, my name is Gerry, and today we're going to be checking out this Gator Frameworks Elite Desk and turning this setup from this to this. Friends, if you've been a long-time subscriber, you might have noticed that my setup has gone through various different kinds of changes over the years. When I tracked everything for my EP Great Unknown, which is available on all major streaming platforms, I opted for a streamlined and simple setup to help with the writing process. I figured by keeping it simple, it would help with the recording process and help keep my mind clear, and for the most part it did the trick. But over time, I caught myself missing having my favorite gear racked right in front of me, and this simple setup ended up being more complicated as time went on, and it was really starting to stump any creativity that I might have had. I was in the market for a new studio desk, and after much browsing and consideration, I opted for the Gator Frameworks Elite Desk. I've been a Gator user for years now. I've used the ProGo Ultimate Guitar Gig Bag on various tours and out-of-state shows, and I use the lightweight molded 4U rack case for my actual rig. So I have full confidence in the brand, and once I heard that they were making studio furniture, I was naturally intrigued. So let's go ahead and travel back in time and put this thing together and go over some of the things that make this desk stand out over the competition. Gator is not sponsoring this video and they're not paying me to say any of this, but if you'd like to sponsor me. Before we continue, if you could please leave a like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on any future videos. Starting off, I guess, would be the packaging. Gator did a really good job of condensing all of the different pieces so that they'd fit into 3 separate boxes. But first things first, we gotta break down and get rid of the old setup. Going off of what I said earlier, I took this simple setup and managed to somehow overcomplicate it. Over time, I've added things like studio monitor stands, a monitor riser, you name it, the works. And a lot of this equipment requires their own individual power supplies and such, so cable management has been kind of a mess too. So let's go ahead and get this sucker out of the way. Before we start opening up some boxes, some of the tools that you'll need in order to put this together are a Phillips screwdriver, a rubber mallet, and a level. Box 1 houses all of the really big slabs of wood, like the big major piece that the legs go onto, and the other pieces that will eventually make up the keyboard drawer. Speaking of the legs, the very first step is to get those suckers screwed on there using what they call the DD screws, but we'll call them the big screws. Lay the big slab of wood, or piece A according to the manual, so that the bottom is facing upwards. You'll see that there are several pre-drilled holes for both the legs and the keyboard tray. In each corner are 4 holes that we're going to screw the legs onto. Just make sure that each leg is pointed outwards. Last, we're going to screw on the feet that go onto the bottom of the legs, that later we can use to level out the desk once it's all assembled. Once we're done with the legs, it's on to getting things prepped for the keyboard tray. There are 8 holes where some furniture connector screws are going to go. Get them all on there, and it should all look like this once you're done. Let's get piece K all prepped up with some furniture connector screws and wood dowel pins, and connect it to piece J using 3 joint connector nuts. I'm using the rubber mallet for the dowel pins. Now, we're going to lay down pieces M and N next to piece L. These are, I guess you could call them the wings or the sides of the keyboard tray. Let's get a couple of furniture connector screws on piece M and N, and then attach them to piece L using 4 joint connector nuts. Make sure that all of the holes are facing on the inside. Next, I don't really know what to call these guys. The manual calls them piece FF, but I'm going to go ahead and call them little rubber deals that screws are eventually going to hold in place. Yeah, I think that rolls off the tongue. There are 6 of these total, and once you lay them all out, you might notice that all the hook tab deals don't face in the same direction. But thankfully, this doesn't hinder the installation process whatsoever, so your mileage may vary here depending on what pieces you end up getting. Anyway, I ended up lining them up like this. Each wing gets 3 of them, and they should line up like this. I'm going to use the rubber mallet to get them in there nice and snug. After this, take some of the DD screws, the big screws, to lock them into place. There are no pre-drilled holes for this, but I was able to get them on there pretty easily with just my crazy big man strength. Next, we're going to attach the rack rails to the keyboard tray. The rack rails themselves actually come apart into two pieces. We'll need to take them apart in order to install them correctly. To do this, just push down on the tab where the big piece meets the smaller piece, and it should come right out. We're going to attach the big pieces to the wings of the keyboard tray that we've been building with a couple of EE screws, the small ones. Make sure that you have everything facing on the inside. Now we're going to grab the J piece, flip it around, and attach the smaller rack rail pieces to it, again with the small EE screws. Alright, we're almost ready to attach the keyboard tray to the bottom of the desk, but first we gotta get some joint connector nuts in place. 8 of them, in fact. Cool, now we can drop that sucker into place. It should go in relatively easy as long as you line up the holes with the furniture connector screws. Once in place, screw in the joint connector nuts. Going back to the little rubber deals that screws are eventually going to hold into place, maybe I should come up with a better name for them. Anyway, we'll need to screw them into this part of the desk. Again, no pre-drilled holes, but it shouldn't be too hard to screw them in, especially if you're freaking yoked like me. We're using the big DD screws for this part. Next comes one of my favorite features of this desk, the cable management tray. Looking at my old desk one more time, you can see where I tried to keep this clean using some really cheap plastic hook deals. It didn't take much weight for these to eventually start breaking off, and honestly speaking, it didn't even really look that great to begin with. So having this cable management tray was just another point towards me wanting to get this desk. To attach it, you'll need to screw in these T-looking things, or piece QC according to the manual, directly into the desk. No pre-drilled holes for this part again, so it's kind of up to you on where you want to place it. Using a measuring tape and a piece of wood as a straight edge, I measured it out to where the edge of the tray met the edge of the desk. Use the big DD screws for this part. And to get the actual tray to attach to the T deals, use the QB screws that came with the T deals. I hope that made sense. Basically, the little T deals come with like proprietary screws that come off, and then you just put the tray on there and screw them back in. You'll know what I mean when you put it together. Now with all of that done, it's time to flip the desk over. I'd recommend getting a friend to help you move it over, unless you're a crazy big strongman guy who doesn't play by the rules like me. Now would probably be a good time to use a level and adjust the feet on each of the legs to get the desk perfectly leveled. Time to pop in the keyboard tray. This part is pretty easy. It should just slide right in if you align it right. One side note, there are 2 levels that'll determine how far back the tray will go. Some people might prefer having the tray sticking out a little bit, but if you wanted to go in all the way, there's a tab that you can hit towards the back of the rails that'll make it do just that. You might now notice that there are 2 gaping holes on either side of the top part of the desk. This is designed for Gator's 4000 series microphone boom stand, or really any boom arm that requires a 1/2-inch hole, in order to attach it to the desk. I have a 3000 series which uses a clamp type mount, so I use the included plugs to cover the holes. Now we're going to get into the good stuff, i.e. the rack spaces themselves. This desk actually offers 2 configurations. You can either opt for a single bay with 1 4U rack space, or go with the double bay and have 2 4U rack spaces. Well, like Yngwie Malmsteen once said, more is more. So I went with the latter, and I'll only be going over the double bay configuration for this video. Boxes 2 and 3 will have the rest of the pieces needed to complete the desk. Pay close attention to piece B, as depending on which side is up will determine which configuration you can use. So if you want double bay action like myself, make sure it looks like this and not like this. Once you're confident that you have the right side up, attach 8 furniture connector screws and 8 wood dowel pins into their respective holes. Now lay out pieces D, E, F, G, and the 2 H's like so, and you know the drill now. If it needs a connector screw, then you give it a connector screw. Wood dowel? You know the answer already. Joint connector nuts? Come on, you don't need me to tell you. One part to pay attention to, though, in all seriousness, is for the parts with the furniture connector screws to be facing up when we put it together. Putting it together, now we have two bays formed. Also, make sure that the holes on the H pieces are facing up. I put piece B onto the main desk part because, frankly, I was tired of being on the ground, but now you should be able to align the two bays onto piece B. Once in, tighten up all of the joint connector nuts that you can. Okay, almost done. Let's take piece C now and plug it up with some furniture connector screws and wood dowels. God, how many times have I said that now? Again, match my configuration if you're going with a double base. Now, land that sucker into place and tighten up some joint connector nuts. Next, using the big DD screws, attach a pair of rack rails into each bay. And now for the very last step, align the top part of the desk with the bottom so that the edges meet. Take the HH pieces to attach the top portion of the desk to the bottom. 2 go on the side and 1 goes in the middle. No pre-drilled holes. You know what that means, don't you? Yep, that means that any human of average strength shouldn't have a problem getting those screws on there. Phew! Now let's get some dang equipment in there. The top of the desk is nice and wide so that I can throw my monitors onto there. For isolation, I grabbed some small Gator Studio monitor isolation pads. Ah man, look at that cable management. Chef's kiss. Oh, did I mention that the legs also have cable management of their own? How freaking cool is that? And with that, it is finito. We're finally done. Thank you so much for taking the time to check out this video. Are you guys considering getting a Gator Frameworks Elite Desk for yourself, or does another option suit your fancy? Let me know in the comments, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Friends, I finally have merch. If you've been wanting to help support me, there will be a link in the description that will take you to where you can get yourself some sweet GT merch. It really helps with making these videos possible. You can also keep up to date with me on social media, and I'm sure that's all on the screen right now somewhere. And that's also linked in the description. And for more guitar videos like this one, you can head over to my channel, hit subscribe, and I will see you next time.